Hey everybody, it's the beginning of week 5, and so much fascinating stuff has been happening. So this video is going to focus primarily on the First Amendment, because in week 5 here we're going to work through the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, and then 11 through 27, the remaining amendments. And your video assignment, or rather, sorry, your discussion board assignment is to create your own 28th Amendment based on whatever thing you think is interesting and compelling and worthy of attention. And then, you follow the directions, the assignment, and you create the 28th Amendment. The reason why I'm making this video is really to focus on the First Amendment, not all the rest. A lot of really important ones. I think by most people's standards, the first is the most, if not one of the most important ones. And I want to focus on this at the moment because we are in a sticky situation. So, brief jaunt down memory lane here. Over the past 8-ish years, 9 years, how long have I been here? It's about 9 years. When I got here to the university, things were really kicking off in terms of the woke movement, right? Which most of you have heard the term woke. Kind of hard to define what woke is. If you go ask Fox News, it's anything they don't like. It's the communists, it's the socialists, it's the libs, it's whatever, right? I think there's a more there's a better definition of woke, which has to do with either attacking or undermining standard assumptions about social mores. It's not as easy as stuff I don't like, but it often has to do with undermining basic concepts and structures within society. We're not going down that path, though, not exactly. The reason I want to bring up the First Amendment is because, as I said, in years past, in the last 9 years or so, a lot of research I've conducted is focused on extreme elements of the rhetoric, the ideas, and the messaging of the far left. Almost all of it manifesting out of both critical theory, neo-Marxism, cultural Marxism, and the like. So those offshoots you get are CRT is a good example of that. So you get authors like Ibram X. Kendi, How to Be an Anti-Racist. That was a doozy. Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility. That was another really prominent one. Both of those were on the bestseller list. And then I've got more esoteric writers like Jürgen Habermas and what's his name? Marcuse, no relation. Marcuse, not Marcuso. And a host of others. And so I was very fascinating in these ideas because they were manifesting on college campuses, and then it was coming out through media and culture. And there was a lot of really, what I found to be, concerning and alarming claims being made about how we should handle speech and ideas, things you can say, things you can't say, ideas you should not be allowed to express, things that you must say in affirmation of certain claims. I wasn't buying it. So I engaged in all that research. And what ended up happening in the long run is there was a series of identity groups championed by the left. Usually it had to do with minority ethnic status. You could be Hispanic or Black, not so much Asian, not so much Jewish, certainly LGBT related things, and women to some extent. But as the movement went on, women kind of got sidelined, and LGBT became more prominent, as well as Black Americans and Hispanic Americans. Point is, the movement sought to, by means of making compassionate arguments about protection and safety and security and fairness, restrict what we could say, restrict what ideas we could utter or express and negotiate, and what types of things we had to say. Right? You have to call someone by this preferred thing, or you cannot refer to someone in this way. Right, you're all familiar with this, so this isn't groundbreaking, but this is the context I'm painting for you. Why do I bring this up? I bring this up because these were all profoundly bad ideas, and they were incredibly authoritarian, very manipulative, power grab. If you can control people's speech, if you can control their ideas, you effectively control and remake society. And so I know the literature on this pretty well, and so this seemed just evident at the outset. And if you go back and you read Jürgen Habermas, if you go back and read Herbert Marcuse and those others, they explicitly lay these ideas out. If you go out and back and read Rudy Deutschke, if you go back and read Antonio Gramsci, they all lay out exactly how you can, and this is over a period of well over 100 years, you can go back and you can follow the playbooks that they lay out to restrict certain things, to support other things, to shift culture or shift politics in a way that you want. It's very insightful. These are very, very impressive, if not toxic and cynical tactics, but effective ones nonetheless. In the end, one of the big challenges that just when the rubber hit the road, you can't define hate speech. Just ultimately what it comes down to, right? I can have a perspective that you think is just hateful. I say I'm not hate. I don't hate anyone. You say this, I disagree. I say this, you disagree. We're just having a disagreement. No, it's hate. That's a challenge. And the same can be said, right? You have ideas, you have disagreements, perspectives. I think that's just hateful and evil and sinister. Okay, that's the problem. If we can't agree on fundamental definitions of what is evil, what is hateful, then we certainly can't put into policy restrictions on that type of speech. Because it's just as likely, and in fact, it's more likely than not, what someone considers hateful, someone else is like, no, this is political, and you need to contend with these ideas. You can't just shut me down by calling what I say hateful. And most Americans, the vast majority of Americans on the left and the right, they understood this. I'm telling you this story to give some context for where we've been, and even up until very recently. All that was not good, but I think we weathered the storm fairly well, and it never got to the level of actually being implemented. But before I move on, remember this. During Biden's administration, he served one term. There was a woman named Nina Jankowicz. She was appointed to, I'm not going to use the right term, I'm going to get it wrong. I call it the Ministry of Truth, or the Department of Truth. It's like this draconian sort of 1984 dystopian concept. But it was really that. The idea was that the government would create an agency where they would determine what is true and false. And then fact check the people in society, the internet, whatever. And this was insane at least, and sinister at worst. And think about it like this. I can kind of understand where they were coming from. COVID was scary. Misinformation, wrong information, outright lies abound. Although I would argue the government was just as mistaken about many things they said as your random YouTube Yahoo. Maybe not as bad. The point is, we were very scared, and people were sick, and there were people dying, and so they wanted to absolutely make sure and control this as best as possible. So we were going to create a government agency to oversee that, but a host of other things as well. Now, maybe you go, I am sympathetic to that, and I think it was appropriate. Fine, maybe so. But let me ask you this. If you were in favor of the Biden administration, maybe you're a Democrat, generally speaking, so maybe you trust any given Democrat administration to be the arbiters of truth. What happens when Trump comes into office, or the next administration, or the next administration? This falls apart almost immediately. The government, in no capacity, should be the arbiter of truth. That just seems on its face crazy. I digress. So between the cultural and the social elements of restricting our speech and guilting us from having certain ideas, as well as the government making attempts to control speech at that level, well, there we were. Trump comes back into office, 2024, just a year ago. Yeah, just about a year ago right now. And one of the first things they did was they started to push for anti-Semitism restrictions. Now, might we all agree that we don't want people saying nasty, hateful, malicious things specifically tied to group identity? Don't say nasty things because someone is black. Don't say nasty things because someone is white. Don't say nasty things because someone is Jewish or gay or a woman or a man. That's all gross. It's very unhelpful, right? You can't help what you are in those ways, and so you should not be attacked for it. Hopefully that makes sense. It's generally agreeable. However, the new administration came in, and it wasn't so much that they were interested in protecting the feelings of Jewish people who might have felt set upon. They were specifically using the term anti-Semitism to limit speech which critiqued the nation state of Israel. There's a big separation there, and I hope you can see that. These are not the same thing, right? Saying something nasty about a person who is Jewish because they're Jewish is different than saying this nation state is objectively doing these things, and I have problems with X, Y, and Z. Big difference. Shortly after that, right, in the last month, I suppose, Charlie Kirk was assassinated. I mentioned this previously. Charlie Kirk was a prominent political figure. He was an up-and-comer in the party. He had a massive following of young people, and he was going to be a big mover and shaker had he not died prematurely. His death ushered in an unfortunate series of opportunities, let's say, for some of the Republican establishment to jump on. Both the president, the vice president, Attorney General Pam Bondi, and I think something vice deputy, what's his name? His name's Stephen Miller. He is the deputy chief of staff. Right. Okay, there you go. And all four of these individuals, with several other less prominent ones, were clamoring for hate speech control. Wait a minute. Just a few years ago, the far left was asking us to limit our speech and control our thoughts and not say these not nice things. And we all said, well, you're crazy. That's a terrible idea. Well, okay, look who's playing the same game now. Is anybody surprised? I'm telling you this because free speech is really important so that we can negotiate very difficult, very complicated, and very controversial topics of great importance, of which there needs to be either consensus or compromise. And if we don't reach consensus or compromise on important, controversial, disagreeable issues, violence will likely ensue, as has historically been the case. The far left wants to control your speech, and they use it for the claims of protection and compassion and all that. And the right wants to do the same thing for similar reasons, but usually with a greater emphasis on security and stability and protection. They're both feeding you a line of doo-doo. Most of us probably fall somewhere in between the far left and the far right, right? Most of us somewhere in the middle we're just regular average Joes and Janes on the left or right side of the spectrum. And it's important that we understand that free speech is important, needs to be protected. And just one final point, I'll get off my soapbox here and let you go about your day. When it seems most compelling, when it seems most persuasive, most intoxicating to use the levers of power to silence your opposition for the horrendous, disgusting, despicable things they're saying, that is precisely when you need to step back and reconsider, right? When the far left wants to silence speech for the issues that they want, or when the far right wants to silence speech for issues that they're concerned about, don't play that game. And don't allow your opponents to be silenced. Don't allow your opponents' First Amendment rights to be taken from them. That goes for everybody. And then maybe we'll find our way past all this. Later.